So back to the environment, like what kind of stage would you say Calgary's in terms of the life cycle for rap?
We're in a great stage.
Are we like
We're in
in
a great
infancy
stage.
still, where we're
Yeah,
still
it's like it's basically like the way I see it now is we are kind of in its infancy, but there's some things that we have going for us. So when I
like
look
what?
at, like, let me just describe the evolution of other music scenes quickly so we can understand how it will happen. Basically, it's the same everywhere you go. There's some guys that are like, you know what? I want to do this for a living. I'm going to make it. Like, I'm going to make it off
I'm
this.
gonna do it
Like,
myself. Yeah.
this is going to be how I make a living. People are going to pay me enough to survive just to do my act, basically. And then there's other people that are like, I'm gonna survive off producing shit, and and whatever. So there's a group of people that is assembles over the course of years, right? People are constantly stepping in and stepping out. People start to work. Some people move from other cities who have worked, who have done big things, because you know how it is. Like, people will be aspirational, they won't necessarily stay in their city, right?
Yeah.
They'll go to where it's happening.
Yeah, like go shop it around for sure. Yeah.
They'll go where it's actually happening, seeing it live, and
Yeah.
they'll go take part in it, right? And then those people will move other places, so they'll bring some experience to it, and whatever. And basically, what happens is it creates a bubbling scene. You know what I mean? It's bubbling, but it's not quite popping. And it gets to the point where it's bubbling and it starts to gain some momentum locally. And as it gains momentum locally, it goes to the next level and it becomes appealing for humans in other places too,
Right.
right? Because there's energy, it's new, it's fresh, it's exciting. These people's lives are changing, they're making entertaining stuff about it. That's some of the most exciting energy we have as humans, is like when people are making it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, you're like, oh, these guys are actually making it and they deserve it because this is spectacular stuff. That's a kind of crux that happens between creatives and their audiences. um, and that's kind of the thing that spreads you to other cities. And now you're not just like a local scene. Now you're like, okay, these people are like famous. Like, these people are appreciated everywhere they go. They don't need
Yeah.
to be in our city. They can go other places and be appreciated for who they are and what they do. And on top of that, they represent our city and our values and our personalities and who we
Yeah.
are,
Or culture.
our
Yeah.
culture, right? And hopefully they do it well, which I think Calgarian artists will do better than any other artists. I do believe that other artists do a great job, but I just think like people in Calgary are like very classy. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Compared to a lot of places.
A lot of class acts around this neighborhood. Yeah.
En masse, right? Like, very classy. Like, don't like to be an idiot, don't like to cause a scene.
Yeah. Like
Don't
we were talking about before, actually care about their lives, care about
care about their
themselves.
own lives, not enough to fuck their lives up, or they won't be nice. They won't care enough about you to fuck their own lives up,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is a good, very healthy trait. And you know, I so I do think that that kind of happens. And what we have, but there's some key things that play into it, right? Like, for example, when Drake blew up in Toronto, right? He did some great work with guys that had been working there since the 80s. You know what
Right.
I mean? So
Some vets.
yeah, so there were guys who were like they'd been mixing records since the 80s. So by the time Drake needed his projects mixed as like the new up and comer, he had a guy who had like a trained ear and had already mixed like breakthrough records,
Right.
right? So that's a huge example of how like time can grow in your favor. You know what I mean? Like, we have some people from Calgary who are similar to that, right? But we don't have them as close as Drake had. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, because they had a bit more of like an actual inner city establishment. They had like a musicians institution for people who were involved in rap music in the city, and that's kind of what he took part in. We don't necessarily have that.
Sort of community here. Yeah.
Well, we don't have that like government initiative. That we might have one like that, but we don't have to my knowledge, we have a ton of mixing engineers who have mixed like, Breakthrough Records, and like, Ilangelo probably lives in the city, so he can reach down and touch us with his hand of God at any moment that he chooses when we're worthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But until then, it's like we have to have the mixing. We have to have this shit. Like we can't make like time can't be our excuse. Like we have to cover that ground. And so that's what we've been doing, you know what I mean? And I do have faith that it's not going to take us as long as it took other music scenes. Like it's not going to take us 30 years. I think that it will only take us, probably a year or two more, maybe three.